Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hey, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And this is the G.I. Joe podcast where we watch every episode of G.I. Joe the cartoon. We go through all the old classic issues of G.I. Joe the comic book, Real American Hero, special missions, what have you. We go through them all page by page, panel by panel, and episode by episode, and we break them down for you. I am your host, Joe Slepsky, and I want to thank each and every one of you listening out there today. Last week we did Snake Eyes Dead Game number 3. The week prior to that, we re-released Cold Slither. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. That was for the Thanksgiving holiday. And it was great to revisit that. It had been a while since I'd listened to it, and I hope you guys enjoyed hearing it again as much as I did. It's a whole lot of fun, so thanks again to all the contributors out there. Now, this week, we are doing, actually jumping ship, so to speak. We're going over to Special Missions. It's issue number 6. And this was the first official, to be continued from the Real American Hero series into the Special Missions series. If you recall, before we did Dead Game, and before that, when we did the Todd McFarlane version of issue 61 of Real American Hero, the regular issue 61 ended the same way as the Todd McFarlane one, with Outback being the only member of a 4-man G.I. Joe strike team that had escaped the Barovian authorities, and he was hiding out in a sewer, and Stalker, Quick Kick, and Snow Job were captured by them. They were going to be held for trial. And what Larry did is he took the adventure of Outback getting out of the country, and he moved it over to Special Missions. And when you revisit it in G.I. Joe 62, that part of the story has been taken care of in Special Missions, and it picks up right with the other guys on trial in Barovia. So it's a really nice way to do a crossover. It both continues the story, but also doesn't make it a necessary read. You really can pick up the one part of the story and understand what's going on. And you really can pick up Special Missions, this one here, and pretty much understand what's going on. You know, it starts there held by gunpoint, and he's on the run, and it's a nice chase movie. It's it's exactly what it is. It's a man on the run movie, which is perfect. It's a perfect choice for Outback to be the guy in that, because he is the survivalist. So I'm really excited to be digging into this issue, guys, today. And before we do, how about a word from our great sponsor? Listeners, I know what you need in your life. You need more podcasts. And you also love movies. So why not do a podcast that's about not one movie? It's about not 2 movies. It's about 3 movies and a meal. I'm talking the Movies and a Meal podcast. This show is great. It's brought to you by Keith, Brad, and Ben, and each week they bring a new movie to the table, which they all discuss as a group. And it's not, your highfalutin movies. It's What We Do in the Shadows, The Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer, and Out of Sight. It's Bad Education, Ghost Rider, and A View to a Kill. It's X-Men Last Stand, Queen Sugar, The Mandalorian, and Major League 2. They are a lot of fun to listen to. You guys know Ben. It's our friend Ben Pensarga. He was a guest on Joe and Joe. In fact, Ben was the very first remote guest that I ever had on this podcast, so he's always got a special place in my heart. I'm really digging this. I just started listening to it last week. It is a lot of fun. They bring a guest in. The guest, I listened to their Heathers episode. They were joined by Kelly, and she went in depth on her favorite movie, which was Heathers, and it made me want to go watch Heathers to watch with them. I really dig it. So guys, find them out there at Movies and a Meal, Twitter, Instagram. Their website is moviesandameal.podbean.com. They put out 1 episode a week. Give them a listen, guys. Support them. Let them know Joe on Joe sent you. I don't think you're going to be disappointed. It is quite entertaining. And now back to the show. Now, we always start our Joe on Joe illustrated shows with our wonderful segment,
You were saying?
and we look at what comic books were on the shelf during the month of release. Now, I'll say this caveat again. We've covered this a few times. It's we're using the release month that's in the reprints, but it's not really the release month. We know this. That's actually the month that was on the cover, which actually meant that's the month that they wanted retailers to remove the comic from the shelf. So anyway, but we're just going to make everything easy. And the reprints say that it's August of 87. So that's what we're going with. And we're looking over at DC Comics, August of 87, Action Comics number 591. It's a really cool crossover. It's Superman versus Superboy. And if memory serves, this is part of a Legion of Superhero crossover, because there was a big issue when they did Crisis on Infinite Earths and rebooted the universe, and then John Byrne came in and rebooted the Man of Steel, and a part of that reboot said that there was no more Superboy. Well, the Legion of Superheroes, it literally is founded by Superboy. Like, that's their reason for existence, not just like in our publishing world, but in their continuity. The founders were, we're talking about Cosmic Boy and Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl. They were inspired by, and technically R.J. Brand himself was inspired by, the exploits of a young Superman, aka Superboy. And that's how he said, hey, these young kids can, form the Legion and fight in the future. So when you remove Superboy from that equation, which is what John Byrne did, you're stuck with a Superboy-less Legion, and they had to figure something out. So they had come up with the idea of a pocket universe, and that Time Trapper kept a version of Superboy, kind of a fake Superboy, in this pocket universe, and that is where this crossover comes into play. So the Legion of Superheroes and Superboy, and I believe it's a two-parter. We've also got Detective 577. This is the year 2 continuing story. It's got that great Todd McFarlane art on it. And it is, if you love Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which as the years go by, everyone starts claiming that's their favorite Batman movie, and they would not be wrong with that because it's an amazing Batman movie. If you love that and you've never read Batman Year 2, you owe it to yourself to read Batman Year 2. It's not as, I don't think I've said this before, it's not as perfect of a series as Batman Year 1. I think Batman Year 1 is fabulous. But Year 2 is great, and it's got a lot of really, really good stuff in it, and it really lays the groundwork that Mask of the Phantasm used. Green Arrow, The Longbow Hunters, Volume 1, Number 1. So Green Arrow was, a poor man's Batman, right? He was a playboy who had an arrow set, and he had an arrow cave, and he had an arrow car. You know what I mean? He had a ward, just like Robin, named Speedy, and they did stuff like they made Speedy, a drug addict, and they kind of hippified Green Lantern in the 70s. So I get it. But they never really addressed the fact that his origins were really just rooted in that Batman clone. So along comes Mike Grell, and he retells Green Arrow's whole persona. And it starts with the Longbow Hunters, and it continues into the Green Arrow regular ongoing series that would continue through the 90s. If you've never read Longbow Hunters, I recommend you pick it up. It is so good, and it really treats Green Arrow with a seriousness. He bases him, takes him out of Star City, puts him into Seattle, so he kind of grounds him in the real world. He removes all of his trick arrows, so to speak, and he's basically just got regular arrows, so he's literally piercing people. A lot of what they did with the Green Arrow TV show stems from the stuff they did in Longbow Hunters. Not one-to-one, certainly. They actually took a lot from the Batman or Green Arrow Year 1 series for the origins of that show. But the kind of realistic take on it of him fighting in a city to save a city, that started really here in Longbow Hunters. Previously, he was just a kind of a superhero doing his thing. Highly recommended. And the Grell art is gorgeous. It's a lot of fun. But it's a really fun series. And it also introduces a character called Shadow, Shado, and then she has a fun mini-series as well. And there's a whole lot of stuff tied up. If you've enjoyed anything Green Arrow in the last 20 years, you owe it to yourself to kind of seek this book out. It's kind of the origins of what the really good stuff that's come out of Green Arrow, and it's readily available in reprints. So speaking of Superboy and Legion of Superheroes, here it is, Legion of Superheroes number 37, and this is the Legion going back to that pocket universe. This is the first part of a 2-part tearjerker where Superboy is going to die, and they go back in time to kind of figure out what's going on. There's like a time barrier wall. There's like a wall of time that they have to kind of crack, and this is the start of it, and it's phenomenal. These 2 issues, 37 and 38, are amazing. I remember where I was. I remember where I bought issue 38 as a back issue. I was visiting my sister at Normal, Illinois, at a comic shop in Normal, Illinois, ISU. And I was looking for these books, and I bought issue 38 there. It's great. It's really, really, really good stuff. So that's on the shelf this week, or this month rather. Same as G.I. Joe Special Mission 6. What else do we got here? Oh, Shadow, Volume 3, Number 1 by friend Bill Sienkiewicz. This book is so great. Andy Helfer, Bill Sienkiewicz, If you've never read The Shadow, this is one of those books that they should be keeping in perennial print. They're not. It's gritty. It's crime. I mean, Shadow's that, old school pulp Shadow character. Speaking of Shadow earlier with Green Arrow, different Shadow. This is the gun pistol toting Shadow. Alec Baldwin did the movie of, which is not great, but to be fair, it's actually not terrible, especially for the time. But that Shadow series is awesome. So check that out. Watchmen's almost done. It's on Watchmen 11. Wonder Woman is on issue number 7. This is the George Perez version. And Who's Who in the DC Universe is update, the 1987 update. Volume 1, issue number 1 hit the stands. Word on the street is they're apparently getting ready to do a big Who's Who omnibus, which is like 1,500 pages. That is awesome. It's both awesome and daunting. It's the kind of book where I want to own, but I absolutely know that when I buy that book, I will never, ever read that book, ever. But I'll have it on my shelf, and I'll be like, check it out. I have an encyclopedia of DC heroes, but I will never read that book. But I want it. I really, really do. So that's it for DC Comics.
You were saying?
Over at Marvel Comics in August of 87, the website shows it alphabetically, and, of course, alphabetically it starts with Action Force, so there's a whole lot of G.I. Joe we're seeing, because Action Force, of course, was coming out weekly. This is the British version of G.I. Joe. I've recently put together, not a complete run, but a decently complete run, but it was a weekly book, and there were shorter stories, but it's that the first issue of this week is issue number 22, which is that great Zek cover with Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes bursting through on the cover. Issue 24 is a Megatron crossover where G.I. Joe and the Transformers did an early crossover. Captain America 332. This is an amazing cover. It's Cap standing in front of the flag as the flag bleeds out behind him. This is when the government said, if you don't want to listen to us and do our bidding, we're going to take your uniform from you, Cap. So they did that. They took away his uniform. Really, really good. Eventually, it gets given to John Walker, who would become Cap, and then Cap himself would become the Patriot. But this issue's fantastic. Oh my gosh, the greatest comic ever. Foofer number 1. No, I'm just kidding. It's Star Comics, but it is Foofer number 1. He's a blue dog, and I'm assuming he's precocious. But Foofer 1 was on the stands, as was Flintstone Kids number 1 on the stands, also from Star Comics. So it looks like there was a bit of a Star Comics launch this month. That's exciting. It's, of course, G.I. Joe 62, which we're going to cover. Fantastic Four number 305 is on the stands, and this is it's an often overlooked era of the FF. The coolest thing that came out of this era, which I do still like, I have a very, very, very guilty pleasure spot for Spiky Thing. If you've never seen Spiky, Ben Grimm's Spiky Thing, well, one, watch out if you Google the word Spiky Thing. I mean, I can't promise you what'll show up, but if you Google Spiky Ben Grimm, I kind of love that character. Now, he's not Spiky yet, but within a couple issues he will be. It is an artist's nightmare to draw, and I love it. And I remember at the time I was fresh into comics and I was still kind of feeling my oats of what books I was reading. I was not reading Fantastic Four regularly at all, but I was certainly aware of who they were. And I remember seeing Spiky Ben in one of these early issues, and it's right around this time. And I remember thinking, that's pretty awesome. How did he get like that? And it's those kinds of changes to a character that really attracts, I think, the young eye, where you know what he looks like, and then all of a sudden he doesn't look like that anymore. Well, what happened? I need to find out that story. So we're in that era of Fantastic Four. It's 305. We're not there. We'll get there in a couple months, and we'll talk about that more then. Oh, Iron Man 221. If you enjoyed, Ant-Man and the Wasp, the second Ant-Man movie, and you like that character, the Ghost, Iron Man 221 is Iron Man fighting the Ghost, the Marvel version. It's not a young lady, it's a dude, but it's the same concept, like an industrial espionage spy person. And I believe we're in the middle of the Armor Wars here, which is my favorite Iron Man story of all time. So if you enjoyed it, seek it out. Iron Man 221. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. X-Men 220. This is Forge on the cover, looking all what is it? What's that Japanese like Tetsuo film? But he's all strung up by cords. It's like he's being taken over by a computer. and Storm is going to get her revenge. So basically, what was going on in the X-Men at the time is Storm had her powers stripped for probably around 25 issues or so, maybe going on 30, and she had finally had enough, and she was going to see Forge, who was both her like star-crossed lover, as well as the guy that invented the machine that took her powers in the first place. And he lived in Dallas, in a place that they call the Eagles Eyrie. And so she was going down there by hook or crook to get her powers back. And what's happening is Forge is actually being held captive by this otherworldly Native American demon called, I forget what it was called, but it was actually he was disguised as Forge's own shaman. So it leads up to what would happen in what is it, X-Men 2, 23, 24, and 25, which was the Fall of the Mutants, or 24, 25, 26, something like that. And it was Fall of the Mutants, where the X-Men actually looks like they sacrifice themselves, and they sort of do, but they get a second chance at life, and they get to move to Australia and live in Australia, but the world thinks they're dead for a while. So this is kind of the start of that, where Chris Claremont was putting the puzzle pieces into place. And the similar stuff's happening in X Factor 19, where Walter and Louise Simonson are putting the puzzle pieces in place for their Fall of the Mutants crossover, which was also it was 24, 25, and 26, or 23, 24, and 25. In this case, it's the X Factor team, which were the original X-Men, of course, although Angel was considered dead at the time. They're fighting Apocalypse's 4 horsemen, or in this case, only the 3 horsemen. It was Apocalypse, or let me see, it was Famine, War, and Pestilence. Death, who was Archangel, who was Angel, who had committed suicide but was actually rescued, he has yet to make his full appearance to fight X Factor. It's so funny, though. X Factor 24, with him on the cover, is the book that everybody says, oh my God, it's Angel's first appearance, or Archangel's first appearance, and Death's first appearance. He's in this book, guys. This is the issue. He makes an appearance. He's like in 2 or 3 panels. And I think in the next issue, he's got a full body shot. But for some reason, because he doesn't then I would say they're more than cameos too. If you read these books, they're more than cameos. But for some reason, it's the one that he's on the cover that everyone says is the really valuable. Well, maybe it's because it's also got the cover in it too. But I always find it funny that this book is overlooked. But it's a cool fight. New York's Central Park against the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse, and Bobby loses his stuff with his he's having some ice control issues, and he loses it. I actually own a page from this comic book. I bought it when I was really young. I bought it in probably 1991 or 92 for like $6. I've got it framed, and it's awesome. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. So that's it for Marvel Comics.
You were saying?
Now let's take a look at the theater and see what was happening in August of '87 in the theater. So on August 7th, this was a really big week. This is wild. So first you got Back to the Beach, which was, if you guys remember Back to the Beach, it was Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon. They used to do the beach movies back in the 60s, right? So this was for an older set. But it had Pee Wee Herman in it. And so that was the draw for kids. So I needed to see this movie because I had Pee Wee Herman in it. So I went through my Annette Funicello, Frankie Avalon fan phase simply because they worked with Pee Wee Herman. Same day, Care Bears Adventure in Wonderland. So now you're hitting the really young set, right? So that opens up. Now you're talking my talk, Masters of the Universe from Canon Films. You guys know the movie. Come on. It's the G.I. Joe podcast. Dolph Lundgren, Frank Langella, Courtney Cox, Meg Foster, James Tolkien. Masters of the Universe opened on August 7th, 1987. And then on the adult side, and maybe this is me thinking these movies are more important because I lived through them, so I kind of remember them. But Stakeout ended up being a pretty big movie. It made a ton of money with Richard Dreyfuss and Emilio Estevez. They made a sequel to it, 2 cops on a stakeout. You've also got Nadine. Now, as a movie, I think it's aged okay. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it had Kim Basinger in it and Jeff Bridges, and they were steamy stars at the time. Kim Basinger, an up and comer, and Jeff Bridges, he was a leading man at the time, so that would have been a big movie. And Who's That Girl, starring Madonna, and Griffin Dunn. I mean, that would have been a huge movie at the time. So It's like all the big studios had a big movie opening that day, August 7th. That was a busy weekend. August 14th, Can't Buy Me Love with Patrick Dempsey. Disorderlies with the Fat Boys. I'm here for that. I remember loving Disorderlies. It has been a long time since I've watched it. Very pertinent to the G.I. Joe crew. You guys probably remember doing the Monster Squad. Fred Decker's movie about the kids that basically run into the Universal monsters, but it wasn't made by Universal, so they couldn't really use them. And they're the sister who's the babysitter and just be a virgin, but that she's not a virgin, so the little girl has to run the amulet. That movie's fantastic. That movie came out on August 14th. And then August 21st, more big movies. Born in East LA, a Cheech and Chong movie. That's funny. Or actually just a Cheech movie, really. Dirty Dancing, guys. Dirty Dancing came out on August 21st. I'm not going to sit here and say it's a favorite of mine, but I recognize its importance. Also, the Garbage Pail Kids movies. Terrible, but absolutely a classic movie. And on 28th, House 2, The Second Story, which is hilarious. I really like House 2. House 1's okay, but I really, really, really liked House 2. And actually a movie called Hamburger Hill, which I can't say I've seen, but I did recently watch an episode on like A&E about the Vietnam War. It was called like Vietnam in Color, I think is the name of the show. And they took newsreels and they cleaned them up, or Vietnam, it was called like Vietnam in HD or something like that. But they took all these newsreels, and I happened to catch the episode that was about Hamburger Hill, and it was a powerful episode. The show pairs up the actual letters from home that people were writing to their loved ones at the time, and any newsreels that they had of that specific actual platoon and those specific soldiers. And then they pair them up with any survivors or the loved ones of the survivors. And they kind of talk to them modern day, like what was going on at the time. And the episode I caught was about Hamburger Hill, about how they called it that because it was just this hill in the middle of Vietnam. It was a tremendous number of soldiers were lost on both sides, trying to take this hill from the North Vietnamese. And eventually the Americans got it. And then like a week later, 2 weeks later or something like that, they were like, oh, okay, we don't need to hold this hill anymore. And they left. But while they were doing that, some U.S. soldier nicknamed Hamburger Hill because it was like a meat grinder going through it to try to take that hill. So it made me want to watch this movie. But that show, whatever it is, it sounds like any. Google it. It was really, really, really good. And I want to catch more episodes of it. But that's a big August, guys. It's a big August. August of 1987. So enough of all of that. Enough of that. We're here for G.I. Joe Special Missions, guys. Special Missions number 6. So here, let's get into it.
Soon the whole world will bow to Destro and Cobra.
Let's start with this beautiful Mike Zeck cover. John Beatty on inks. Classic cover. And it says everything you need. You've got Outback freezing because he's drawn in his normal Outback clothes, which is the short sleeve shirt, camos. He's got his gun. So his teeth look like they're chattering. You see the cold breath coming out of his mouth, but also he's just a man in a t-shirt in snow. So you assume he's freezing. Underneath a cliffside that is kind of giving him concealment, and on top of it, you have these dudes in military gear, like military uniforms, obviously searching for someone. And the top of him is the lieutenant that's the lead guy in this, that we see his grisly fate towards the end of this issue. But he's beckoning forward for more soldiers to come. There's a lot of really subtle acting on this cover that I love, from the teeth, so it makes it look like he's chattering, even though it's just one single panel. The way he's got his mouth looks like it's a chatter. The way he draws his eyes, looking straight up like he's going to be found out. The breath giving him away, which is nothing he can do about that. The fact that they've got him in green camo in the white snow, and the contrast that makes is awesome. If you look at the leader, the general that's leading the search party, he's got one leg forward, so it's showing that he's in progress towards us and towards the direction of Outback, and his right arm beckoning the other soldiers his way. So they're not standing, they're not retreating, they're moving towards the camera, and the camera is they're moving towards Outback, right? So there's all this movement on just a simple cover. It really says a lot. Even if you don't know anything about this, you could look at this cover and go, that guy is in trouble. I like that. I like that a lot about a cover. Plus, it's a snow cover. And a lot of times snow covers can be either really cool because they're super white, or they can just kind of sit there and be flat. He gives a lot of nice texture to the snow. So I applaud it. I applaud this cover.
Yo, Joe!
Evasion. The events leading up to this story took place in G.I. Joe number 61 by Bashful Bob. Now that'd be Bob Harris, the editor. And it's written by Larry Hama. Artist Herb Trimpe. We haven't done a Herb Trimpe story in quite a while. Bob Sharon is the colorist. Phil Felix, the letterer. And Jim Shooter was the editor-in-chief. So it picks up exactly where we left off in the pages of G.I. Joe 61. And the fact that it starts out with you need to go reference this other thing to really get the full story is what I love about comic books. They're an ongoing saga. We need to do more of that if anyone's listening. Great shot. You see a smoking pistol. You don't know who he shot at. You don't know what he shot at. You see the fire, the fire still burning on the truck that they blew up that had their contact, I forget the guy's name, but the dude that sacrificed himself said, this is better than going to the gulag. You still see his truck smoldering in the background. The pistol's still smoldering. So that concept of smoldering is absolutely, it's captured in this image because the fight's over, but there's still the after effect, the emotion of the fight. And that's really, really cool here. And in between his legs, we see our heroes. So they're framed by it, and it brings the eyes to it's Quick Kick and Snow Job and Stalker, and we find out that it was that they've really been captured.
Yo, Joe!
Trimpe uses a lot of tall, thin panels throughout this issue. I noticed, and I appreciate that because it's very much taking us through a story step by step. So we're still getting caught up with the action and what's going on. They show us this general. It's Colonel Ratnikov. Two things about him that are fantastic. More than two things. But first of all, they give him these super, super thick glasses so that when Trimpe draws them head on, it's like you can barely see his eyes. It's just wisps of eyes. And that feels like a throwback to the way Will Eisner would draw, people with thick glasses, or if you guys, Mr. Magoo, like that cartoonish element of it. And I think it works so well because it tells you everything you need to know about this guy. Even though, hey, I've got super thick glasses too. Not everyone with thick glasses, is like a cartoon buffoon, but it works perfectly with this and what they're trying to get across to you about Colonel Ratnikov. And the second thing, which is amazing, and I only noticed it, I noticed that on a reread of this, is they give him this gold tooth. It's not colored as such, and it might be like silver, so it may not be actually gold, but he's got this shiny tooth, and every time they show it glinting in the sun. So he's got this fake metal tooth, and it's great. So, he's giving them their options, basically. You're gonna go with us. One of the soldiers says that, hey man, one of the guys had a brown beard, and none of these guys they captured has a brown beard. This actually brings me to a little bit of the issue that I had with this issue when we did it in G.I. Joe 61, is that the way they colored them, Outback and Snow Job, they look exactly alike. They gave them both the same color red hair. They're two dudes with big bushy, it's combed differently, but big bushy red beards and hair. So the fact that they used that one of them had a brown beard as a distinguishing mark, it's like maybe there was a different choice that should have been made somewhere, because Snow Job's sitting right there. I feel like Snow Job should have been like, hey, I'm right here. What are you talking about? Having said that, when they're at least, and this is the reprint I'm looking at, when they show Outback a couple pages later, they really lean into his beard being brown. But then a few pages after that, the coloring reverts to it being really red. All that's avoided if you pick someone different. And I get it, you want to have Outback because he's a survivalist, but that's all avoided if you just don't go with Snow Job. Not that I don't want you to go with Snow Job, but you know what I'm saying. It just still seems like a weird choice, and it gets even weirder when the way he looks is used as one of the identifying factors in getting them caught and starting the chase after him. So
Yo, Joe!
So the guys are sassing back at Colonel Ratnikoff, and Snowjobs, you touch him again, and he says, Snowjobs says, better to fight than to rot in prison. But Ratnikoff's, I'll give him this though. I mean, he doesn't take any guff. Like, he's actually fairly competent throughout. He fails the test at the end, of course, but he figures out that the only way out of that dead end alley, the only way, was through the sewers. So he orders the guys to pop the sewer grate.
Yo, Joe!
And when they do, they crawl down, and they don't really see anything, because by this time, Outback's well on his way. And this page, the previous page, if you guys are reading along, these are really, really good examples of step-by-step storytelling. You can accomplish what they're doing, which is looking for him, and he's gone, and he's on the run. You can accomplish that in a few different ways. You can, just do it with word balloons. But this is taking the time, using these smaller panels, these thin, narrower panels, to show, okay, pulling the manhole cover, guy dropping down, taking a look with his flashlight. I like how his art is adjusting to what it would look like in the dark with the flashlight, and then cutting to, like, it's everything that's involved here is step by step by step. This comic takes its time to tell you the story because it wants you to understand that it's difficult. This is the story of his escape. So we're going to go with it every step of the way. If the story wasn't about the escape, if the story was about what he had to say to the thing, they would he escapes, and then, you can magically have him get out somewhere, throw a little bit of action in the middle there. But the way Larry chose to tell this is the story of the escape. Which is, one, smart because it takes up an entire issue and it makes for good fodder for an issue. Two, it gives believability to the characters because it really shows us, again, step by step, all the things that he has to do. You see Outback down here with his compass, trying to figure out what direction to go in. He uses that light that from his action figure, try to figure out which ways he's at. Like all of his survival skills are on play here. That's what we want out of a G.I. Joe issue. And that's what we get out of this G.I. Joe issue. You easily could, and actually you could tell this by skipping this issue. If you just get to G.I. Joe 62, we're not there yet, but you see that, Outback's back home and safe, and he kind of recaps the story that he escaped from Barovia. That's fine. But here we're going to take our time and we're going to get into it. And you do that by taking your time in every step of the way and telling the story.
Yo, Joe!
So as the truck's pulling away with the guys, Quick Kick and Stalker and Snowjob prisoner, they see a gasoline tank driving behind them, and they're no dummies. They see what's happening. The Colonel's going to pump gasoline into the sewers and light them up. Very much, very reminiscent of what would eventually happen in 2 years later in Last Crusade, when they threw gasoline in the sewers with the rats. The colors on this page, again, this is the reprint. The colors now make Snowjob look like he has a brown beard, which is funny. The one thing I like that they do is they really beat up Stalker. And I don't like that they beat up Stalker, but they're continuing to show it. Trippy has Stalker's head down the whole time. He's not participating in the observations that Quick Kick and Snowjob are doing. This is great. And they're showing that Ratnikoff is competent. Like, he pretty quickly got a gas tank in there, and he has the idea, we're just going to flush this guy out with a whole bunch of gasoline.
Yo, Joe!
This is the page where Outback's beard genuinely looks brown, but it also looks the same color brown as Snowjob's. But he sees all these rats just scurrying through, which is gross. And we see that even an Outback can be squeamish because they all go running past him. They're so scared of something, they run right past him. And he's pretty grossed out. Now, he's smart enough to know something's up, but he doesn't exactly know what's up.
Yo, Joe!
And this is a fun little artistic choice. The gasoline's been pumped. He's going to use a soldier's cigarette to throw it into the sewer and light the gas on fire. And the first foomp, Trippy has actually breaking the panels and shooting up the side, which is nice and not something I would have expected to see from Trippy, who, a little old school. I think he usually follows the paradigms of the panels a little more. So that's great. We get some nice explosions, and we see that the explosions are traveling down the street. So they're on their way in every direction, but they're on their way towards where we presume Outback is. And we see the shining fake tooth again, and we see the fires traveling through the pipes. It's just a matter of time.
Yo, Joe!
Now, Outback is starting to smell the gasoline, so now he realizes what spooked the rats, and he can finally, the sewage was masking it, so he realizes he's got to get out. So he's racing to escape the sewer tunnels. Again, taking their time with telling the story, and always putting obstacles. So not only does he have to climb up and get the sewer grate off, but now he's going to get run over by a trolley car. But he actually uses it to his advantage. He grabs the trolley and he uses that to suck him out of the manhole just in time as the fire catches up to him. And now he's underneath the trolley, traveling out of whatever city this is in Barovia.
Yo, Joe!
Is a little bit of exposition on this page, which is I actually had to laugh at. So one of the soldiers basically says, all right, we didn't find any bodies, but the guy just kind of vanished. But what's great about showing the competence of Ratnikov here is he doesn't just say, oh, okay, we got him and move on. Like, he really believes that the guy's still out there. The guy being Outback is still out there. And this is where we're getting an exposition. So he has to tell the soldier who presumably lives there and knows all this stuff. He says, to the east lies Russia and Siberia. To the south is a desert populated by religious fanatics. To the north lies Austria, bounded by the Alps, impassable at this time of year. That leaves only our western frontier that borders on the decadent democracies. So that's how they know to look west as to how Outback would escape. But it's funny that he has to go through all those things to let us know that that's how he knows the West versus someone who would just in the moment go, oh, he's got to be going west. That's the only way, because it's the only democratic nation that would take him in if he crossed their borders. But he makes a pretty quick, sizable show of force at the borders.
Yo, Joe!
And Outback, getting off the trolley, steals a coat and kind of blends in. He's got a little corncob pipe thing going on. And he passes up the delicious enticement of a skunk cabbage and a hot onion pie. That sounds delightful. And he goes to a chicken vendor. So there's a guy with a truck that's selling a bunch of chickens, and he's going to buy the truck off him. And so he's getting some transport and getting out of the country. Again, thin panels, lots of panels on the page showing the steps that he's taking, escaping the trolley, finding and stealing a coat. It just doesn't show him in the coat, and then he says, "Good thing I stole this coat." They show us him. They show us him doing it. They show him doing it to us. However you want to phrase that, you know what I'm saying? Which is great, because that's what we're here for.
Yo, Joe!
So now these guys, they tracked captured Joes back to their hotel. They see that there were all these Barovian forged rubles and dollars, Barovian currency, whatever it is, expert and methodically forged. It's got the same serial numbers, so they figure if they can find some place that has these, they'd be able to find where the guy's been. 2 questions on this, and it's funny because I watched Mank this week, and then it made me rewatch Citizen Kane, and I was reminded at the beginning of Citizen Kane, the whole reason for the movie is Citizen Kane is Charles Foster Kane saying the word Rosebud, except in the very beginning of the movie, there is no one in the room with him when he says Rosebud. Therefore, no one would have heard him say Rosebud. Therefore, there wouldn't have been a movie. So in this case, applying, and it's an amazing movie, but there was no one in the room. So applying that logic here, why does Outback have his fake money on him? Why do the guys not have their fake money on them? Because they say that they searched the luggage at the hotel, and that's where they found this fake money. So why Outback, who never went back to the hotel to get the money, and he didn't, why did he have his on him? Why were they not packing their fake money? I don't know, but it works as a link in the chain of directing them towards capturing them. So we'll let it slide for now.
Yo, Joe!
So Outback's making his way along these western roads, and he's got the farmer gave him a chicken. It's funny, but it's also crucial. Like, what's great about I think Larry's writing and really good writers is that there's nothing wasted. He's got a chicken truck, so they say let's give him a chicken, and it actually comes into play later. So as he's driving, he sees a hitchhiker, and he realizes if I pick up this hitchhiker, it'll actually help for his cover story that it's 2 dudes, not just one. So you might as well grab him. And it turns out the guy's going to hijack him. So lesson to everybody, don't pick up hitchhikers. Because Outback's mother always warned you not to pick up hitchhikers.
Yo, Joe!
Now, back at the farmer's market, Colonel Ratinsky, what's his name? He's having everyone show your rubles, right? And they find out that the chicken farmer, it's the guy that Outback bought the truck from, he had the 50,000 rubles on him, the serial numbers match, and the guy's being legit, the guy's being honest. He's like, hey man, someone came, they bought my truck, I didn't do anything wrong. He's being as forthcoming as possible. He even tells the colonel what direction the guy went. The guy was great. So let's look at this storytelling. I love it. The camera starts with, kind of distant from the farmer, but you've got the colonel's gun in the frame, and the gun's pointing down. The next panel, the gun is starting to point up, right? It's not exactly at him yet, but it is absolutely heading up. So you know that he's pointing the gun at this farmer. And the farmer's now he's getting more scared, and the camera cuts in closer to him. He's also higher up in the frame. The next panel, and so now the farmer is lower in the frame, and Ratnikov's face enters the frame from above. So it's from a status change, right? So now the gun's not in play, and Ratnikov takes that higher status. He's the gun. He's the power in this panel, while the farmer's, shirking and giving him everything he needs. And then we get a nice, finger point, he's off in this direction. But this three little panel sequence is really nice because the guy's helping, but he's not afraid. Then he's afraid, and then he's powerless. It's pretty cool.
Yo, Joe!
Now we get a sequence absolutely straight out of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Outback, who's driving this chicken truck, which is very much like the truck Indy stole at the end of Raiders, when he's got the Ark in the back, and it's before they take it to the island, and he ends up in the fight on the side of the truck and punching the Nazi and crawling through the front and underneath and over. You guys know the fight's the best. This guy's got the pistol on him, and the guy's actually going to turn in Outback to the colonel. So Outback stomps on the brakes, smashes the guy's face against the windshield, and just repeatedly smashes this guy's face against the windshield, just repeatedly, until we find out a couple pages later the guy's face is pulp. So he murders this guy, which is, it's fun. Let's get a body count for him. But it's fun. This is just very reminiscent of that Indy fight. And Outback is showing us this whole issue. Not only can he survive in the wild, but he's a formidable fighter. He's a fabulous addition to the G.I. Joe team. And this is just a great action page.
Yo, Joe!
So Colonel's out with as much of his army as he can handle. The Colonel's in this helicopter. They're flying above, and they brought that chicken farmer along to make sure that he can identify him, because even the Colonel doesn't want to, he wants to make sure that he gets his man. He's being thorough. He's actually really competent in this all the way up to the end. And as they're driving, the chicken farmer sees that his truck that he sold Outback is in a ravine. So it's been run off the road and it's destroyed. And now we don't know why it's been destroyed, remember. So all we know is that Outback got the better of that dude and apparently beat him up, but we don't know what happened.
Yo, Joe!
As the helicopter lands, we see a dead body. Thankfully the camera doesn't show us what it is, but we see from the chicken farmer, he's like, the guy's face, it's just so beat up, There's the gun that is the hijacker, that the hijacker fired. It's got a spent casing. It smells of, being recently fired. One cartridge is missing. And this is all identified by the colonels, again showing he's competent. And the pinhole eyes, because of those thick glasses, is great, because it just adds this comical element to him, balanced with his absolute competence, because he's really good at what he's doing.
Yo, Joe!
So then one of the soldiers finds that there's a trail with a blood trail heading off into the wilderness, fresh blood. And so they're going to find him. So it's going off, and there's 50 different passages. So Ratnikov says, we'll send a reinforced platoon up everyone. You guys come with me. We're going to follow this blood. We're going to see what's happened. And the chicken farmer's left looking at this going, there's something wrong. Something is missing. And this goes back to nothing is wasted. Every opportunity to give something fun to the reader is here. This could be just a straightforward adventure, but it's also a little bit of a mystery. You didn't realize you were reading a mystery, but you were.
Yo, Joe!
So now the helicopter's flying overhead. They're following the blood trail and the foot trail. And they see it's Outback's body, his camo pants, his jacket, his boots, laying collapsed in the snow. He's bleeding. So apparently that guy's got the better of him. And They land the helicopter nearby, and they're gonna approach it. But even then, Ratnikoff is careful. He says, "Cover me. This guy could be pretending." So it's not necessarily a slam bang. We're gonna get him.
Yo, Joe!
And he kicks at the body, and he sees that it's like a snowman body. It's full of snow. And in the middle of it, like the chest of it, is the dead chicken. And that was the source of all the blood, with Outback's clothing there. And that's when Outback, who had been hiding half naked in the tree line, pops out with his gun on these guys. And he says, "Get back in the chopper. I'll accept the chicken farmer," because he knows that chicken farmer had no choice. He's not gonna get that chicken farmer hurt. And we realize that's what was missing. He threw in a chicken when he sold him the truck, which is a little like a 3-page mystery for us of like what was missing from this equation. We saw everything that we saw on that page of Outback fighting the guy, but now we see the truck's overturned. But what's missing? Hey, it's fantastic.
Yo, Joe!
If we haven't been convinced yet that Outback is a dude that can handle himself, we've seen him in the sewers, we've seen him in the city, we've seen him literally in the Outback, and now we go into the air and we see that even in the air, he can survive. He can, guide the airplane using his compass and map markers, and he's going to tell them what direction to turn and fly and all that stuff. Don't get any funny ideas. He's just pissed at everybody. But this is how good Outback is, and that's what this whole issue is showing you, just how good Outback is. That without any controls, he's going to tell this plane how to get to wherever he's going. We don't really find out. We don't need to know. It's just one of those neighboring democratic countries. That they smashed the controls of the helicopter, and so he wants them to be as blind as he is, and he's going to tell them what direction to go. It's really great. And we see that it's the final panel it's flying off into cloud cover, which is very, very, very important for what happens next. So remember that.
Yo, Joe!
Now he's looking at, he's using his watch and the compass, right? So he's timing it. They're flying at X amount speed for X amount of time, for Y amount of time in Z direction. And so that's how he knows where he's at. And he gives him a fighting chance. He says, "Hey, make a 180-degree turn, stay above the cloud cover, and you'll get home safe." He tells them this. And then he jumps, he's got parachute, and he jumps out to parachute out of it. He says, "Go," and he says, "Don't look back." Outback does not want these guys to die. And this is where good old Colonel Ratnikoff makes his fatal mistake. He's follow him down, "I want that terrorist dead." And the pilot's like, "But he said he's a terrorist and he's an enemy of the state." So now we go back to that cloud cover thing. They've been in the clouds this whole time. As the helicopter drops out of the cloud cover, we see, I don't know what country this is, but there's dudes in opposing military uniforms with guns, anti-aircraft guns, and they're now all pointing at this helicopter that just dropped out of the clouds.
Yo, Joe!
And that's all she wrote for Colonel Ratnikoff. I don't think he survives this, but who knows? Maybe he shows up in a later issue. Maybe he magically survived it, but I don't think he could have. The helicopter gets blown out of the sky. Outback gets quote unquote caught by this. It's Hauptmann Rockwitz. I think so. It sounds like they're German. They have, quote, "a suspected Barovian commando in custody. He's wearing the partial uniform of a colonel," so he's wearing the clothes of Ratnikoff. And he's not in any distress, and he's good spirits, and he just wants to talk to the American consul. So that is how Outback escaped from Barovia. Guys, I love it. That's a great issue. That is a wonderful issue, and a really good example of beat-by-beat storytelling. If you guys are looking to, be artists or just, make your own storytelling, this is a really wonderful issue of taking your time, showing the important things that need to be told, and getting from point A to point B to point C to point D. This is as good an issue of G.I. Joe as I've read. I love it. It's so freaking good. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Remember, guys, follow me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at Joe and Joe Pod. Send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know if you want to be a guest in the show, and we'll have you on. We'll probably be getting back to some animated stuff as the new year comes. We'll probably keep doing the illustrated stuff for the next few weeks, just as we get through the New Year's, just because life's busy. But I do want to get back. We got Spy Troops coming up, and then Valor versus Venom and stuff like that. So we're going to get back to it. I appreciate all of you. Hope everyone's staying safe and healthy and happy. And now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.